Okay. Hello, students. In this presentation, we will be starting your sixth unit. Okay, so which we will be discussing in detail Java classes and objects. So basically, I'm going to divide the sixth unit into two presentations. So let us have a look at the contents. In this presentation, I'm only going to cover classes and objects in Java, classes, objects, how to create objects in Java, methods in Java, and constructors in Java, and then how do the class variables and methods behave in Java, inheritance in Java, and the remaining concepts of this keyword, arrays, and interfaces that we will look into detail in the other presentation. Okay, so let us start with the classes in Java. So as we know that Java is truly object-oriented programming language, and everything that's why because in Java consists or content inside the language or inside the class. So everything we write in Java program is included inside the class, even if we are writing the main method that is written inside the class. And what does class do? Class is like a user-defined data type that we create, and then this class is able to create its own variables. We can create, we call them as objects in C++. Now remember, in Java, we are going to call them instances of the class. Okay, so just the difference is of terms, that in OP you call it as an object, but in Java, you are going to, in C++ language, you called it as object, but in Java language, prefer the word instance. Okay, so instance of the class or the variables of the class means basically the object of the class. So what basically in the Java program we do, we create a class, we create the objects from the class, and then those objects communicate among each other. Okay. So class gives the behavior of to the object, and how it gives its behavior by giving the data fields for that object and methods for that object. Okay, so as you can see here, there is a syntax given to define a class. So inside Java, how do we define a class? See the syntax. Defining class. So you have to write the keyword class, then class name. Now remember, in Java, we are going to write the class name starting with capital letter. Okay, so class name, then extends superclass name. Okay, in the curly bracket, then we write the fields declaration, means the variables of the class, they are called as fields in Java, and the functions in C++ language that we have learned earlier, the term functions is now known as methods in Java. Okay, so just the replacement of some terms. So instead of variable declaration, we are just going to write here fields declaration, and here the function declaration means ultimately the methods. Okay, so methods we are going to declare. So what do these fields will be? The fields means the attributes of an object, okay, of this class, respective class, and methods will be the method, means the coding that will be implemented or will manipulate these fields. Okay, so methods means the function that will perform some task over these fields. So these two things, okay, you must define inside the class. Now whatever you can see here inside the square bracket is the optional thing, and whatever written the otherwise is the compulsory or mandatory thing. Now here the class name, okay, as you can see here, it could be the subclass, and the superclass name could be the parent class. So in case of the inheritance, you can use this syntax also. Okay, that's why this thing is optional. It is not mandatory that every time you are going to use the inheritance format. You can simply define the class also, as we have performed till now in our practicals also. So the basic syntax could be like class name, and then opening and closing braces. Okay, even you can have the class like without having any fields, without having any methods. So such a class is known as an empty class. Okay, like this. you can have the class like class A, and inside that just the curly brackets. So empty body. Such a class is known as an empty class, though you can create the instances, means objects from such classes, because but it is an useless class because it is having not no methods inside it, and no manipulations of the data fields. So such class is not used. But if you can call it as a basics, if you follow the basic syntax of how do we write a class in Java program, then you can go with this syntax, right? The class keyword, then class name, opening and closing braces, and all the other things are optional. This thing is mandatory. So class structure provides a good way to encapsulate the data and operations of new type together, instance data and instance method. So basically we call these fields as an instance data because they are associated with the object. They are attributes of an object, and these methods, they are the instance methods. Means the methods which are called by the object with the help of which the data fields of the object will get manipulated. Now, how do we declare the fields? So field declaration is very easy, that we have already learned in the C++ language also, and it is the same way as the C++. In Java also we declare the fields like you write the class name, suppose class rectangle, opening the curly brackets, and inside that you can write the variables that you want to declare with their type and then the name. So you can have the declaration like int length and int breadth. So if I want to declare the fields inside certain class, I can declare it as int length, int breadth, in this way. This is how we do the field declaration, as the same way as we do in the C++ language. Let us have a look at the method declaration. Now method, what does it do? Method is used to manipulate the data fields, okay, of an object. So basically methods will encode, or it will contain that coding part inside it. What is the basic syntax of the method? Method means the function in C++ language, okay. So as you can see here, here is the type, then method name, then inside parentheses, we have to mention the parameter list, and then opening and closing braces, and we need to mention the method body. Okay, so as you can see here, the method declaration has basically 4 parts. As the first is the type. What is this? It is the return type, means this method is going to calculate some going to perform some manipulation over the data fields, and it is going to return some particular result of certain data type. So that return type you have to mention here. Okay, so this is going to be the return type of this method, means which type of value this method is going to return, that you need to mention here. Then you have to write down the method name. Then inside the parenthesis, you have to mention the parameter lists. This is the list of the parameters that the method will take when it is called. Okay, so these parameters means the arguments passed to this method on which it will perform the calculation. And inside the closing brace, here you have to write the coding part. Here we will be writing those lines which will perform some action. So name of the method, return type of the method, list of parameters, and the method body. That those are the things that we must mention inside the method of any Java class. Then let us have a look at the creating objects. Now we have a class. How do we declare the class? How do we initialize or declare the fields? How do we declare the methods and write the method syntax? And now we can move on towards creating objects. Once we have the class, we can create its object, okay, inside the main method. And how do we create objects in C++? I hope you remember that in C++, we simply write the class name and the variable in front of it. In the same way, you are going to create the objects in Java also, but there is some difference in the creation and declaration and instantiation of an object between both the languages. Okay. In Java, how do we create the objects is using the new keyword. Okay, as you know, Java objects means it is actually the instance of that respective class. So once you have created the class, it is having that fields associated with that object, it is having the methods associated with the object, and then you create the object, you call those methods, and you establish communication among the methods inside the class with the help of object. But how do we create the object when it is actually instantiated, that you have to learn. Okay, so in Java, what is something new or what is different than compared to the C++ language is that we create the object using new keyword. Okay, as you are familiar with the job of new keyword or new operator, which is a dynamic allocation, memory allocation operator. So in C++, we have learned that it returns some result as an address, and that address is assigned to the left-hand side pointer variable. But in Java, what does it do? So new, it actually creates an object's memory, allocates the memory to the object and returns a reference. It returns the reference, okay, to the variable, which can hold that reference, okay, which is assigned that reference of the created object. So you will understand this concept with the help of an example. So I don't want to confuse you. Let us have a look at this example of rectangle object so that you will understand. So what I mean by declaring and what I mean by instantiating. See, when you are simply writing a rectangle R1, it is not going to instantiate your object in Java. Though it will instantiate your object in C++ language, but in Java, it is not going to work. So in Java, you have to write the class name and then this is the variable. So when you are writing R1, it is in this statement, rectangle R1, what you have created, you have just created a variable which can be assigned the reference of the rectangle class object. Okay, which can be assigned the reference of the rectangle class object. So when I am writing rectangle R1, I am just declaring that reference variable. Okay, so what is the action here in statement 1? Only declaration is happening. And what is the result? There is nothing getting instantiated. So R1, just a reference variable is created. In the second statement, as you can see, R1 is equals to new rectangle. Okay, so when you are using the new keyword, that time, that moment, the actual object instantiation will take place in Java. Okay, so remember that is the basic difference in C++ and Java, that when you create the object in C++ language, you simply write rectangle R1, and your R1, when it is created in C++ language, it will get the variables or data fields associated with that object allocated inside the memory. Okay, but this doesn't happen in Java. When you are writing simply rectangle R1, it just creates the reference variable which can hold the reference of the rectangle object. But when you write using the new keyword, this statement R1 is equals to new rectangle. So what does it do? It instantiates the object. What is here this rectangle method is? It is the default constructor of the rectangle class which gets invoked, and it helps to instantiate the object. So this happens, as you can see in the second statement, R1 is equals to new rectangle. इथे यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? यहाँ पे जो R1 आपका variable है, now it is holding the reference of the rectangle object, means instance of the rectangle class. अभी उसका reference कौन hold कर रहा है? R1. So now you can call the methods using the R1 variable, which is an instance, okay, which is an instance of the rectangle class, उसको रिप्रेजेंट करने वाला रेफरेंस वेरिएबल जो R1 है, इसकी हेल्प से अभी आप मेथड एक्सेस कर सकते हैं. So as you can see in this statement, R1 is a reference to the rectangle object. R1 is not exactly the rectangle class object, but R1 is reference. Okay. तो रेफरेंस वेरिएबल का कंसेप्ट आपको पता है, जो वेरिएबल किसी लोकेशन को क्या करता है, पॉइंट करता है. ओके, सो इट रेफर्स टू दैट. सो R1 इज रेफरिंग to the actual rectangle class object which is being allocated after using the new keyword and invoking the constructor of this class. ओके तब हम बोलेंगे कि ये इंस्टेंशिएट हो रहा है, तब हम बोलेंगे कि ये जो ऑब्जेक्ट है रेक्टेंगल क्लास का अब इंस्टेंशिएट हुआ है. तो पहले स्टेटमेंट में क्या हुआ है, ओनली डिक्लेरेशन हुआ है रेफरेंस वेरिएबल का, और दूसरे स्टेटमेंट में उस रेफरेंस वेरिएबल को हमने क्या किया, किसका रेफरेंस दिया, रेक्टेंगल क्लास के ऑब्जेक्ट का रेफरेंस उसे दिया है. Okay, so this is something important that you must understand. In case of the Java and C++, there is a difference while we are creating the objects. So objects in Java, you have to use the new keyword. So using new keyword only you can create the objects in Java language. आणि हेच आपण एका लाईन मध्ये सुद्धा लिहू शकलो असतो, रेक्टँगल R1 is equals to new rectangle. Okay. So you're declaring and you're instantiating in the same line. I can create more than one instances or many number of instances from the rectangle class. You can write rectangle q1 is equals to new rectangle, rectangle q2 equals to new rectangle. You can give any valid Java identifier name here, right? q1, q2, and you can give any name. Rectangle q3 equals to new rectangle. So each one of them, q1, q2, q3, what are they? They are the reference to the rectangle object. So multiple rectangle objects will be created, allocated memory inside, okay, allocated memory inside that heap storage, and as we know which memory it will be allocated, the respective data fields. मतलब अगर उस object के डेटा फील्ड्स है क्लास में डिक्लेयर की हुई तो उतने उसे वेरिएबल्स अलोकेट हो गए, अगर 3 डेटा फील्ड्स है तो 3 अलोकेट हो गए. तो ऐसी डिफरेंट copies object की बनेगी and every object will get its own data field, okay, separately. तो हर ऑब्जेक्ट को अगर 3 क्लास में डेटा फील्ड्स डिक्लेयर्ड है तो हर ऑब्जेक्ट की 3 ऐसे डेटा फील्ड्स की कॉपीज बनेंगी. ओके, सो एवरी ऑब्जेक्ट विल हैव इट्स सेपरेट डेटा फील्ड कॉपीज. नाउ दिस as you can see, we can make the two variables to refer to the same object also. Okay, and this can be done by using such statements like rectangle r1 equals to new rectangle. ठीक है, ये एक हमने इंस्टेंस वेरिएबल क्रिएट कर लिया, और फिर r2 is equals to r1. इससे क्या होगा, आप क्या कर रहे हो, R1 एक नया आप ऑलरेडी क्रिएट कर रहे हो इंस्टेंस वेरिएबल. ठीक है, मतलब R1 ए रेफरेंस हुआ एक रेक्टेंगल क्लास के ऑब्जेक्ट को, लेकिन आपने फिर से क्या किया, R2 को क्रिएट जब किया तो उसे R1 असाइन कर दिया. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ, R2 भी वही पॉइंट करेगा जहां पे पहला वाला रेक्टेंगल क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट हुआ है, या जहां उसे एक मेमोरी अलोकेट हुई है तो वहीं पे वो पॉइंट करेगा ये वेरिएबल भी. सो बोथ R1 एंड R2 विल रेफर टू द सेम ऑब्जेक्ट. दिस कैन आल्सो बी डन. Okay, now accessing the class members. Now, as we have learned how do we declare the class, how do we declare the fields, how do we write methods inside the Java program, then we have also studied how do we create the objects in Java. Now, after creating the object, what you do, you have to establish communication in that program. So communication is established when you call the methods using the object name. So you have to give a call to the method by using this syntax. So you have to simply write object name, then using dot operator, you have to write down the variable name equals to value. So you can directly access the variables by using the object name. And then you can change its value or modify the value. As you can see in this example, if I have created the object R1 of the rectangle class, then if I want to initialize the data fields of that class rectangle, which were length and width, as we have seen in this, right? See, if this is my class A, int length, int breadth, ओके ये इसके दो अगर सपोज डेटा फील्ड्स है तो इसे मुझे अगर इनिशियलाइज करना है तो व्हाइल आई एम क्रिएटिंग द ऑब्जेक्ट R1 और वो क्रिएट करने के बाद हम उसे डायरेक्टली क्या कर सकते हैं विद द हेल्प ऑफ सच स्टेटमेंट्स वी कैन मॉडिफाई और असाइन द वैल्यूज टू these two variables of that object. So R1 dot length equals to 15, R1 dot width equals to 10. इस स्टेटमेंट से क्या होगा R1 जहां कहीं मेमोरी में जिसे भी ऑब्जेक्ट को एक्चुअल रेक्टेंगुलर क्लास के ऑब्जेक्ट को रेफर कर रहा है उस ऑब्जेक्ट के लेंथ वेरिएबल में 15 वैल्यू स्टोर होगी और विड्थ वेरिएबल में 10 वैल्यू स्टोर होगी. You can do the same job of assigning the values to the data fields of an object by calling a method also. इससे आपका task और reduce हो जाएगा. So instead of writing or assigning the value to each variable separately like these, what you can do, you can simply use the method like this. So R1 dot get data 1510. So using method, what you are actually doing, suppose we are having the get data method and get data method contains the code of assigning the values to the length and width. Then we have already performed such type of operation inside C++ programming also, and you know the use of get data method. You have written the get data method, how do we assign the values to the respective variables of that object. So using method also your task can be reduced. So the same operation, okay, you can perform with this also using method also. Okay, so this is how you access the class member using the object name and dot operator. Let us move on towards the constructor. Now, as we know, we can perform the operation of initializing the value of data fields using two ways. Till now, we have studied two ways. First, you separately access the fields. You separately access the fields using the object name and dot operator, assign the values. Second, you directly call the method which helps to assign the values using the object name. Third, you can use the constructor. Because both of these things, what are they doing? See, this is kind of tedious thing. You can't assign, you can't write the coding line for every variable and then assign its value. Secondly, you can't every time write this much thing for every objects. Okay, for every object's field to be get assigned. So constructor will simplify your job. How? So as you know that what is constructor, it is also a method. So you can call this special method instead of calling those methods because this method will simplify your job in much better way because it will initialize the value for object's data field at the time of its creation. So as we know that constructors are invoked when we create them. When we create the object, the constructor is invoked automatically and constructor will contain the code to initialize the data fields for that object. And hence, if we are using the constructors, our job will be much more minimized. Okay, to initializing the values for the object data field. So constructors, special kind of methods invoked to construct objects, and it initializes an object when it is created at the very first time. So this program is demonstrating the use of constructor written in Java क्लास रेक्टेंगल. तो कंसेप्ट आप लोगों ने सब पढ़े हैं. ओके, वही जो C++ में आप लोगों ने पढ़ा है वही यहाँ पे भी है. जावा में भी we are going to implement the same things. The concept is not going to change. Only some the differences of accessing the values or how do we write the syntaxes. Those differences you will see here. Okay. Class rectangle R. In this program, we will be calculating the area of the rectangle. Then two variables, float length and breadth. Now inside this, as you can see, the constructor I have written. How do you know that this is a constructor? Because constructor has the same name as that of the class name. So rectangle. Now this is a parameterized constructor which is taking two parameters of type float, float A, comma float B. What is the job of this constructor? It is going to assign the first parameter into length and second parameter into breadth. Close the constructor. Now we are going to write one method which was having the return type of float. Remember, when we are writing the method name, we have to write it in small letters. And what is the job of area method? It is going to calculate the multiplication of length and breadth values and going to return the result. Now, class rect area. This is the class which will include the main method because we have finished with this class rectangle. इसमें हमने एक constructor use किया है जो सिर्फ value initialization का काम कर रहा है और दूसरी area method है जो कि length और breadth इन दो values का calculation multiplication perform करेगी क्योंकि rectangle का area calculate करने के लिए we have to multiply length by breadth. Now we will be writing public static void main. Okay, string args. Now inside this, what do we do? Inside main, we create the object. How do we create the objects in Java? You have to use the new keyword. So you have learned that rectangle class name R1 instance variable equals to new of rectangle. Now this is your constructor which is going to be invoked. So you have to pass the parameters here only. How many parameters does your constructor takes? It takes two parameters, right? 1, 2. So here you have to pass how many? 1, 2 parameters. Of which type? Of float type. Okay. Now float area 1, a new variable I have declared here. So area 1 will hold the new area calculated. So I am going to assign it the result of the area method of this class. How I am going to call this method? R1.area. This will calculate the area. ठीक है, यहाँ पे length में value 15 assign हो जाएगी. With the help of constructor, we have initialized the value of length and breadth variable for the R1 object. ये इस तरह से आपका R1 जिस ऑब्जेक्ट का रेफरेंस होल्ड कर रहा है, ठीक है, उसके लेंथ में और ब्रेड्थ में कौन सी वैल्यू आएगी? यहाँ पे 15, यहाँ 10 और फिर एरिया मेथड जब कॉल होगी तो 15 और 10 का मल्टीप्लिकेशन परफॉर्म होगा और इसका रिजल्ट जो है 150 ये इस वेरिएबल में असाइन हो जाएगा एरिया 1 में. उसके बाद आपको रिजल्ट प्रिंट करना है तो एरिया इज इक्वल्स टू यहाँ पे अपेंड होके आनी चाहिए वैल्यू इस वेरिएबल की तो प्लस एरिया 1 concatenation operator use किया and this is the result. So this is how we use the constructor in Java. Okay, so constructor minimizes your job to instantiate the values of the data fields of an object at the time of its creation. The constructors are invoked automatically and they will assign and the values to the respective data fields associated with that object. ठीक है, और हम यहाँ पे एक डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर भी रख सकते हैं. इफ यू डोंट वांट टू यूज द पैरामीटराइज्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर यू मे यूज द डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर आल्सो. डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर में कोई पैरामीटर्स नहीं होंगे. This parenthesis will be blank in front of the rectangle and then inside the opening and closing brace you will have to write down those values which you want to initialize like length equals to 0 और breadth equals to 0. तो आपको जो वैल्यू यहाँ इनिशियलाइज करनी है वो आप लिखोगे लेकिन यहाँ पैरेंथेसिस में कोई भी आर्गुमेंट पास नहीं होगी. So that is the non-parameterized constructor or default constructor. So we can have the same program by using the default constructor also. We can write the same program using the parameterized constructor also. So both approaches can be used. Okay, now let's have a look at the concepts that we have already studied in the C++ language also, and they are having the same operation in Java language also. That's why I'm going to take or discuss in brief these three methods. So the first one is methods overloading. So methods overloading means basically comes under the concept of polymorphism. Methods overloading is the term here in Java, as we already familiar in C++, the function overloading term. Okay, so what is function overloading? That we are going to use the same name for more than one methods in the same program, but to perform the different tasks. Okay, so I hope you remember the program of calculating areas for different shapes, square, rectangle, circle. We used the same method name, that is area, but we calculated the areas of different shapes, square, rectangle, and circles, but the name was same, and that is the function overloading. Same operation is here, also same concept there in Java. Also we can perform the methods overloading, just function word replaced with the method word. Okay, बाकी जो कंसेप्ट है वो वही है। मेथड ओवरलोडिंग यानी एक से ज्यादा मेथड का नाम सेम होना एक ही प्रोग्राम में जावा के, और आप उसे यूज कर रहे हो टू परफॉर्म द डिफरेंट टास्क. Okay, and this methods will be having or will be differentiated based on the number of arguments they take, the type of the parameters passed. Okay, so based on that these methods will be differentiated. So methods overloading is basically using the same name to more than one methods to perform the different tasks, and all these methods will be differentiated on the basis of types of the parameter passed and number of the parameters passed. So basically this is the concept of polymorphism in OOP. So I'm not going to take the program because we have already performed much more programs related to the area. In your practical also we have done this already, and in C++ also hope you remember that area method we have used multiple times and overloaded many times. Okay. Okay, just wait. Okay, then static members. So as we know, uh, we have used the normal data fields. The normal data fields will be allocated separately to every object. So every object will get its own copy of the regular data fields. But in some programs of the Java, we may require that field that will not change for the all the copies of the objects. Means however whatever number of objects you are going to create from that class, you want that field to be common to all the objects, for all the objects. So such field can be created using the static keywords. Okay, so static members में static data fields भी आप create कर सकते हो और static methods भी create कर सकते हो. So both can be created inside the Java program also, as we have created in C++. So the concept that static members hold in C++ is same that and their meaning that they hold in C++, the same meaning they hold in Java language also. Just the difference is of how do we access them. So as we know that static members मतलब जो members common रहते हैं for all the object, उनकी एक ही copy create होती है. Okay, whenever they are instantiated or whenever they are declared inside the class, only one copy of them is created, okay, for all the objects, and all the objects can perform the manipulations over it. But remember the static methods जो होती है वो सिर्फ static data ही data fields को ही access कर सकते हैं. हालांकि बाकी सारे objects static data fields पे operate कर सकते हैं, लेकिन static methods ही सिर्फ क्या होती है आप static data field पे ही operate करती है. So remember there is a difference between the normal methods and the static methods. Normal methods कोई भी डेटा फील्ड एक्सेस कर सकती है, लेकिन स्टैटिक मेथड अगर आप इंक्लूड करते हैं प्रोग्राम में तो इट कैन एक्सेस only the static variables only. Okay, so static method can access only the static data. और इसीलिए हमने जिन लोगों ने उस दिन का प्रोग्राम देखा होगा प्रैक्टिकल नंबर 9, तो उसमें हमने जो स्वैपिंग के लिए मेथड डिक्लेयर की थी वो हमने स्टैटिक रखी थी. क्यों? क्योंकि हमारी मेन मेथड स्टैटिक थी, तो हमने जिस मेथड को दूसरी मेथड को एक्सेस करना था उसे भी स्टैटिक ही रखा. तो स्टैटिक कैन एक्सेस ओनली स्टैटिक कंटेंट. दैट इज द थिंग. एंड वन मोर थिंग, स्टैटिक मेथड्स जो होती है उन्हें एक्सेस करने के लिए ऑब्जेक्ट की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. जैसे हम नॉर्मल डेटा जो मेथड्स होती है उन्हें एक्सेस करने के लिए ऑब्जेक्ट नेम और डॉट ऑपरेटर यूज करते हैं, लेकिन अगर आपको स्टैटिक मेथड्स एक्सेस करना है तो यू हैव टू राइट so if there is a statement inside main, suppose आपकी ऑलरेडी एक मेथड है, सपोज आपकी मेथड है मल्टीप्लाई, MUL नाम की मेथड है स्टैटिक मेथड, एंड सपोज योर क्लास नेम इज मैथ. सो इफ यू वांट टू एक्सेस दैट मेथड सो यू कैन एक्सेस इट लाइक float b is equals to, अगर आपका क्लास नेम जो है वो मैथ है तो मैथ डॉट आपकी जो मेथड है MUL, ओके, स्टैटिक मेथड, एंड इन फ्रंट ऑफ दिस यू कैन पास द वैल्यूज. दिस इज हाउ यू access the static method inside, and then here I can give semicolon. Okay, so what this statement will do, it will execute the static method multiplication, okay, 15 10, and it will assign it to the b. So basically what you are doing here, you are using the class name and then dot operator, okay, to access the static method. So remember the static methods are not accessed using the object name but the class name. And if you remember, अगर आपको याद होगा तो हमने जो C++ में, ठीक है, ये हुआ जावा का, तो C++ में हमने जैसे एक्सेस करते थे हम लोग, wait, let me tell you that thing also. C++ में अगर आपको यही मेथड, ठीक है, मैथ क्लास की अगर एक्सेस करनी होगी तो ऐसे लिखते थे मैथ रिजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर एंड MUL, और यहाँ पे वैल्यूज आपकी 15, 10. सो दिस इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन C++ एंड जावा. वन मोर डिफरेंस बिटवीन C++ and Java. So you must study comparatively while you are studying all these both these languages, okay, distributed in your 6th unit. You must study comparatively. कि जब भी आपको ये टॉपिक दिखे कि how do we access them in C++, just have a look at that and don't get confused. So this is the basic difference. This is what we do in Java, this is what we do in C++. Okay, so you have to access the static method using the class name only. Okay, you can't access the static method using the object name. And one more thing, static method can access only the static data. Other than that, no data is accessible to the static method. And most of the time in Java programs, we use the static data fields like to create the count, how many objects are going to be created inside the class, right? Because it is a common field for all the objects. So it will keep on count how many objects you are creating inside your program from that particular class. And then the nesting of methods. What do we do in nesting of methods? So one method inside the other method, when it is getting called, that is the nesting of methods. As we know, we can call the methods only using the object name, but that is not the complete truth. We can call the method inside the other method also just by calling its name, as we do in the C language. So nesting of the methods means you are calling the method 1 inside method 2, and then method 2 is again getting called by some method 3. Method 3 is again getting called by method 4. So inside the other method, you are calling the other means there is method 1, method 2 of the same class. You're calling the method 4 from that same class inside the other method. That can be done. So that is what the nesting of methods. As I can give you the mm, okay. So if we are having the suppose uh, inside your class there is a m1 method, you have declared it somewhere, and then you are going to have the method m2, and inside the m2 you can directly call the m1. This is possible with Java. Okay, so we have already done this in C++ also. So I don't find it necessary to explain it again. Okay, so that's why I briefly explained these concepts. Okay, and then the inheritance, the concept of inheritance comes. So that we can see in the next lecture. Okay, so for today we will end here. So from inheritance and the remaining concepts, how do we define subclass and the four types, method overriding, program, final keyword, abstract class, arrays, that we will be seeing in the next lecture. So for now, thank you.